20:07 hours, December 29, 1944. 8,000 feet over the dark water west of Mindoro, Philippine Islands. Major Carroll C. Smith, 29 years old, grips the control wheel of his Northrop P-61A Black Widow. In the red glow of the cockpit lamps, his flight jacket looks almost black. Beneath the aircraft's belly, four 20mm Hispano M2 cannons sit loaded and safetied. Behind him, in the raised rear cockpit, First Lieutenant Philip Red Porter hunches over the green-lit face of the SCR-720 airborne interception radar. Outside, there is almost nothing to see. No horizon. No moon. Just a smear of cloud and the distant, invisible coastline of Mindoro, where MacArthur's troops and airfields lie exposed. For days, Japanese bombers and fighter bombers have probed at those targets in the dark, hoping to find parked aircraft, fuel dumps, ships at anchor. Tonight, Smith and Porter are one of the thin layers of defense. The P-61A A Wastin, tail number 42 to 5,595, is a heavy machine for a fighter, over 20,000 pounds empty, close to 30,000 at takeoff with fuel and ammunition. Two Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engines, each producing about 2,000 horsepower, pull the big twin-boom aircraft through the humid Philippine night at more than 300 miles per hour in cruise and up to about 360 in a dash. It carries 3 men when fully crewed: pilot, radar operator, and gunner. Tonight, the turret is locked forward and essentially unused. The real teeth are the four 20mm cannons firing from the belly and the secret in the nose. The SCR-720 radar, a 10cm set with a maximum range of roughly 8,500 yards and a 180-degree forward sweep. The radar unit alone weighs over 400 pounds. Air and Space Forces magazine at 20:07, the quiet is broken by a clipped voice in Smith's headset. Fighter director, call sign on the ground radar net, comes through the static: Black Widow, this is control. Bogies single, bearing 260, range 15 miles, Angels 8, heading 080, speed 200. Smith answers immediately. Control, Widow 255, roger. Turning to 260. He banks left. The big aircraft leans over, and the island lights vanish below the wing. Smith watches his instruments. Outside, the night stays empty. In the rear cockpit, Porter twists the control knob on his radar scope. The phosphorescent trace sweeps in a steady rhythm. For a moment, there is only the baseline. Then, at 20:09, a faint blip appears at the outer edge of the range scale, about 15 miles out, high left of centerline. Range, bearing, and closure rate begin to resolve into numbers in Porter's mind. Contact, he says calmly. Single target. Bearing 275. Range 14 miles. Angels about 8. Heading 080. He's coming in. Porter's job is to do in the dark what daylight pilots do with their eyes. He reads the small deflections of the radar pip, calls out corrections, and steers the Black Widow into an invisible intercept. Every few seconds he updates Smith: turn left, stop turn, steady, he's drifting left, come 2 degrees right, he's at 11 miles 10, closing slowly. Below them, the sea is a black flat void. Somewhere out there, Japanese bombers, Irving night fighters, perhaps, or twin-engine bombers on harassment raids, are trying to thread their way through American radar coverage to reach the new Mindoro airstrips and the shipping off the beaches. For the 418th Night Fighter Squadron, December 1944 has been a brutal month. They've just shifted from Morotai and Leyte to a rough airstrip at San Jose Mindoro, McGuire Field, arriving on the 26th, right into the middle of intense Japanese naval and air pressure against the landings. The squadron has P-61s now, long-legged, radar-equipped fighters that finally give 5th Air Force a real answer to Japanese night raids. Each crew has spent months training in Florida and then learning the Pacific environment the hard way, by flying in weather, over water, with minimal navigation aids, trusting instruments and the disembodied voices of ground controllers. At 2014, Porter's voice tightens a notch. Range 5 miles. He's starting to fade in and out in cloud. Recommend you climb to Angels 10. Smith eases the nose up. The altimeter needle slides through 9,000, then 10,000 feet. The P-61's broad wing and slotted flaps give it decent maneuverability for its size, but he keeps his climb shallow. He doesn't want to bleed too much speed. Range 4 miles, 3.5. He's steady, no evasive action. I think he doesn't know we're here. The combination of ground-based radar and onboard SCR-720 is new enough that many Japanese crews still do not expect attack from the dark. Their doctrine assumes that if they fly at night and at low or medium altitude, they will be hard to find. Smith and Porter are proof that this assumption is now dangerously obsolete. At 2016, Porter switches to the shorter range scale on his scope. The blip jumps outward, now filling more of the screen. Range 2 miles. He's at your 1230, just a hair high. You should get a visual soon. Close to 1,500 yards. Smith peers ahead into the darkness, straining his eyes. The red cockpit light and fur-lined glare shield around Porter's radar scope are designed to preserve night vision, but the adjustment still takes time. Range 1 mile, 800 yards. He's dead ahead. At 2017, a darker shape slowly materializes against the marginally lighter sky. A faint, twin-engine silhouette, perhaps 1,000 yards ahead and slightly above. A few tiny navigation lights glimmer, either lazily left on, or shielded to avoid ground observers and missed by the crew. "I've got him," Smith says. He eases the throttles forward, bringing the double Wasps up toward combat power. The airframe vibrates more strongly. The P-61's forward-firing 20mm cannons are fixed. To hit, Smith needs to fly the nose into firing position, get close, and hold it there. At night, no tracers are loaded. Tracer rounds would only mark the attacker's position, ruining surprise. All rounds are solid, explosive shells. When they hit, the target will know. He slides the Widow in closer. Range compresses, 800 yards. 600. 400. At 2018, at about 300 yards, Smith flips the safety on his firing button and tightens his grip. The Japanese aircraft, later identified as a Nakajima J-1N Irving twin-engine night fighter adapted as a bomber escort, still flies straight and level toward Mindoro. Smith presses the trigger. 4 20mm cannons hammer at once. The Black Widow shudders as a short burst, maybe 1 second, 40 to 50 rounds, streams out, invisible in the dark, then connects. Sparks flash along the Irving's right wing route, followed by the sudden bloom of flame. The enemy aircraft rolls, nose sagging, then abruptly disintegrates as fuel and bomb load ignite. Porter watches the radar blip smear, then vanish. "Splash one," he says quietly. Smith banks away to avoid flying through the debris and fire. There is no cheering, no exultation, just a fast mental calculation of fuel state, ammunition remaining, and position. One bomber down. The night is just beginning. At 2022, control calls again. Widow 255, this is control. New bogey, same sector. Bearing 255, range 12 miles, Angels 8. Vector to intercept. Smith glances at the dim outline of the instruments, then at the faint glow of Mindoro's coast to his left. He turns the aircraft back into the dark. The hunt continues. 24 hours. Fuel gauges are steady but ticking down. Smith has been airborne for more than an hour. The P-61 carries enough fuel for long patrols, on the order of 6 to 8 hours depending on power settings, but combat climbs, intercept dashes, and loitering at low altitude all eat into that reserve. Porter reacquires the new contact at 11 miles. Single bogey. Same altitude, roughly same heading as the last. Looks like another one coming straight for the convoy. Below them, to the east, is the reason for all this effort: American and Allied shipping clustered off Mindoro, bringing in troops, ammunition, fuel, and aircraft to push the campaign toward Luzon. If Japanese bombers can get through in numbers, they can put ships on the bottom and crater the new airstrips. The 418th Night Fighter Squadron has already seen what happens when night defense fails. Earlier in the month, one of the LSTs carrying the squadron's own ground echelon to Leyte was struck by a kamikaze during a landing. The ship burned, and the squadron lost much of its equipment to the sea. Only luck and discipline kept the casualty list from including their own airmen. At 2027, Porter's voice comes over the interphone again. Faster now, range 4 miles. This one's maybe turning a little left. He might be searching. Smith adjusts his heading by a few degrees, trusting the unseen geometry in Porter's scope more than his own instincts. Night fighting is a team sport. The pilot and radar operator must think as one. Range 2 miles. Bogey now at your 1 o'clock, slightly low. You should get visual in a few seconds. Smith squints again into the gloom. No moon, just the faintest horizontal sheen where the sea catches flow from some distant cloud break. Then he sees it, a blot of deeper black, 2 engine nacelles, a tailplane. Another Irving, or possibly a twin-engine reconnaissance bomber, slow and heavy with ordnance. He closes cautiously. The temptation is always to rush the shot. But getting too close risks collision in the dark, or flying through the bomber's slipstream and losing control. Training at Orlando and months of operational practice have drilled the ideal distances into him. At about 800 feet, Porter confirms, "You're right on him. No sign he's seen you. Recommend shoot from here." At 2029, Smith thumbs the trigger again. This time he holds it a fraction longer. Another crushing vibration. Another invisible stream of 20mm shells. Impacts walk up the left wing of the Japanese aircraft, then into the fuselage. A sudden flare, fuel tank or bomb bay contents igniting, and the bomber rolls sharply, nose dropping. It plunges toward the sea, trailing fire. There is no parachute. No radio call. Second bandit down, Porter reports. Control, Widow 255, tally-ho on second target. Splash confirmed. On the ground radar net, controllers mark another X through a plotted track. What they do not yet appreciate is that this night, in 2 separate sorties, Smith and Porter will account for 4 enemy aircraft, a record for a single U.S. night fighter crew. By 2040, fuel and ammunition are now low enough that prudence demands a recovery. Smith turns southeast and calls for landing instructions. The flight back to McGuire Field is short but tense. Japanese raiders sometimes lurk near the landing pattern, hoping to catch aircraft on approach. At 2055, the Black Widow drops gear and flaps. The runway at McGuire is a rough strip, hacked out of Mindoro's terrain, with pierced steel planking and earthen revetments. Anti-aircraft guns ring the field, alert for any inbound silhouettes. Smith brings 42 to 5,595 down, tires screeching on the steel. He taxis toward a revetment as ground crewmen in dungarees and helmets rush out with chocks and fuel trucks. The refuel-rearm cycle is fast and crude. The P-61's 4 belly cannons are topped up with fresh 20mm belts. Armorers push drum after drum of ammunition up on trolleys, feed rounds, snap access panels back into place. Fuel hoses hiss as avgas flows into wing tanks. Ground crewmen wipe oil stains off the nacelles and check the R2800s for leaks. On the ground, Smith and Porter climb down for a brief debrief in a tent lit by faint bulbs and candles. An intelligence officer marks the kills on a map with a wax pencil. Another man in khaki makes notes: altitude, heading, estimated type, whether there were explosions before impact. There is coffee, lukewarm tin tasting, and perhaps a cigarette. That is all. At 22:45, orders come through. The Japanese are not finished. There are reports, intercepted radio traffic, radar tracks, suggesting additional enemy aircraft forming up for another run. Smith and Porter are going back up. By 23:10, A Wastin is back at the end of the runway, engines run up to takeoff power. The P-61 as black paint absorbs what little light there is. Only the navigation lights on the wingtips and the dim glow from the cockpit break the silhouette. Night fighters in this theater often fly without external lights, but in the crowded airspace over Mindoro, some minimal lighting helps prevent friendly collisions on departure and arrival. Once clear of the field, lights will snap off. 23:13. Smith releases the brakes. The Black Widow lurches forward, engines roaring at full military power. The aircraft accelerates, heavy with full fuel and fresh ammunition. At roughly 110 to 120 miles per hour, Smith eases back on the yoke. The nose lifts, the main wheels rise, and the P-61 claws into the night sky again. They climb on a heading that will take them out over the sea lanes where inbound Japanese aircraft must pass. The air is bumpy, scattered clouds between 2,000 and 6,000 feet force them to weave up through gaps, instruments flickering as the attitude indicator tilts and rights itself. At 23:27, they reach 6,000 feet and level off. Smith pulls the throttles back to a cruise setting, trading speed for endurance. Porter checks his radar, adjusting gain and tilt to optimize for low-level targets. The SCR-720 is not magic. It needs altitude and clear line of sight to work best. Sea clutter, false returns bouncing off waves, can mask low-flying aircraft. But the set's 5-mile practical range at combat altitudes and its sector sweep are a revolution compared to earlier, shorter-range systems. For the next hour, the mission becomes monotony edged with fear. They fly racetrack patterns, parallel legs over the Black Ocean, listening to the occasional chatter on the radio and the steady whine of the engines. The cockpit smells of hot oil, sweat, and cordite residue from the earlier engagements. Sometime around 0:40, the call they've been waiting for comes. Widow 255, control. Multiple bogies, bearing 210, range 18 miles, Angels low, 200 feet. Speed 150. Likely floatplane or torpedo bomber. 200 feet. That is almost wavetop level. The Japanese are trying to slip under both ground radar and conventional searchlights, using the darkness and sea haze to hide their approach. Smith pushes the nose down. The altimeter unwinds, 5,000, 3,000, 1,000 feet. He levels out just below 500 feet, adjusting power to keep from overspeeding. At this height, there is almost no margin for error. A moment's inattention, a misread on the artificial horizon, and he could fly straight into the ocean. Porter works his radar, fighting the clutter. Getting a group return. I think there are at least 2, maybe 3 contacts. Range 15 miles, now 12, still at low altitude. I'll try to peel one out. At 0:47, the first distinct blip separates from the mass. Got one. Bearing 205, range 8 miles. He's right at or just above the water. Smith turns gently toward the new vector. The P-61's large wing catches the moist air. He can feel the slight buffeting of low-level turbulence. He is now hunting another aircraft that might be only a few hundred feet off the surface, in pitch-black night, guided by a radar return on a glowing scope 15 feet behind him. The margin for mistake is measured in seconds. 0:50 hours, December 30th, 1944. Range 4 miles, Porter says. He's at your 12:30, slightly right. Altitude still almost on the deck. Smith squints ahead, but there is nothing to see. At low altitude, the horizon disappears. The black line of the sea merges with the black sky. Only the artificial horizon and the dim reflection of the instrument panel give any sense of pitch and bank. Range 2 miles, 1.5. He's now dead ahead, maybe 100 feet above us. Smith eases the nose up just a touch. He doesn't want to climb too much. If he overshoots vertically, he could end up silhouetted above the target, visible if the enemy crew happens to look up. Then he sees it. At about 0:52, a tiny V-shaped shadow appears, darker than the surrounding night, with a slight glimmer of spray where the floats kiss the sea. A single engine. Twin floats. A vertical tail. Roof, Smith mutters, his term for the Nakajima A6M2N floatplane fighter bomber, the seaplane derivative of the Zero, used for reconnaissance and nuisance raids. The type is known to operate at very low altitude, sometimes dropping small bomb loads or strafing. We chased him around like trying to catch a greased pig in a barrel, Smith will later recall. The floatplane weaves, perhaps sensing the noise of the approaching twin-engine fighter. It banks right, then left, trying to stay low, its pilot hugging the dark surface. Smith stays just above and behind, adjusting throttle minutely. Closing too fast could cause an overshoot, dropping back too far risks losing sight. At 0:54, at around 200 yards, Smith lines up the shot. No tracers. No visible cue. Only muscle memory and the dim dot of the gun sight. He squeezes the trigger. The 20mm cannons pulse again. The Black Widow bucks. This time, Smith holds the burst for nearly 2 seconds. Rounds tear into the roof's tail and rear fuselage. The floatplane jerks, tries to climb, then its engine coughs flame. It smashes into the water at high speed, sending up a brief plume of spray and burning fuel. Third Bandit destroyed, Porter confirms, after seeing the radar return vanish and a bright smear appear momentarily on the surface. Fuel is now significantly lower. Ammunition is more than half gone. But control reports more contacts. The Japanese are determined. Perhaps this is a last-ditch effort to hit the Mindoro beachhead at night before Allied air superiority in daylight becomes overwhelming. 1:20. After another short patrol leg and a brief quiet period, Porter picks up a new return. This one is different, higher, faster. New bogey, bearing 190, range 10 miles, Angels 3, he reports. Speed maybe 300. Could be a fighter or fast bomber. Smith brings the P-61 back up to 3,000 feet. At this altitude, the SCR-720 has a cleaner view, ground clutter falls away, and the contact becomes a sharp, consistent pip. Range 7 miles 5, he's steady on heading. I'd say he's inbound to the airfields. This target will later be described as a new Japanese medium bomber type, sometimes mislabeled in memory as a Frank due to speed. In reality, likely another twin-engine bomber or fast heavy fighter. Whatever it is moving. At 1:25, Porter calls, range 2 miles. You'll see him soon. He's a little low. Smith stares ahead, then spots an outline, a larger, more powerful machine than the roof, climbing slightly, perhaps searching for the coastline or adjusting for an attack run. He checks his ammo counters. They suggest he is getting low. In truth, he has more left than he thinks. Round counters in wartime aircraft are not precision instruments, but as far as he knows, he may only have one good burst remaining. That changes his tactics. Instead of firing at 300 or 400 yards, he chooses to close to knife-fighting distance. Every yard closer means tighter shot dispersion, more rounds on target, less chance of a miss in the dark. He pushes the Black Widow forward, letting the distance close fast. The gap narrows, 800 yards, 600, 300. At 150 yards, he can see the faint shape of the enemy's tail code and the glint of canopy glass. Porter, watching his scope, realizes how close they are and how fast closure is building. Careful, Major, you're almost on top of him. Smith nods, though Porter cannot see it. His breathing is steady but faster now. This is the most dangerous shot of the night. At approximately 1:28, at an estimated range of just 75 feet, barely more than a few aircraft lengths, Smith fires. This time, there is no doubt. The 20mm shells tear into the bomber's left engine and fuselage at point-blank range. The impact is instantaneous, catastrophic. The engine explodes outward in a shower of flame and metal. The aircraft shudders, banks wildly, and then breaks apart. Smith yanks the P-61 into a hard climbing turn to avoid the debris field. Shards of metal and burning fuel flash past the canopy. For a moment, the cockpit is lit by orange firelight, then the night closes in again. Fourth bogey destroyed, Porter says, voice flat with controlled adrenaline. Control, Widow 255, we confirm fourth kill. Request vectors home. Fuel state low. On the ground, controllers and intelligence officers begin to understand what has happened. In 2 sorties spanning one night, Smith and Porter have intercepted and destroyed 4 Japanese aircraft, 2 twin-engine bombers or night fighters, a float plane, and a fast medium bomber, using their radar and the concentrated firepower of the P-61's 420mm cannons. By 1:40, Smith points the nose back toward Mindoro. Fuel gauges are deep into the lower bands. Any additional delay, a diverted landing, a missed approach, could force a ditching at sea. Approach control talks him down. Widow 255, you are cleared to land. Winds calm. Report runway in sight. There is no runway to sea in the conventional sense. Just a rectangle of slightly lighter darkness, studded with hooded lights. At 1:52, Smith drops gear and flaps for the last time that night. He keeps his speed carefully above stall, mindful of the Widow's weight and the rough field. The touchdown is firm but controlled. The P-61 rattles across the steel planking, decelerating as Smith brings the throttles back and feathers the props. They taxi into the revetment. Ground crewmen surround the aircraft, eyes searching for holes, leaks, scorch marks. There are powder streaks on the belly around the cannon ports, some chipped paint from flying debris, but no serious damage. When Smith and Porter climb down, someone counts the remaining ammunition. The exact figures are lost to history, but by all accounts, they used the majority of their 20mm load, hundreds of rounds, over the course of the 4 engagements. In the makeshift operations tent, dawn beginning to lighten the eastern sky, an intelligence officer tallies the results. 4 enemy aircraft destroyed in one night. For the 418th Night Fighter Squadron, December 1944 will go down as the month in which 9 Japanese aircraft were destroyed, 1 over Morotai, 8 near Mindoro, with Smith and Porter responsible for 4 of them in this single, extraordinary night. For Major Carroll C. Smith personally, the night of 29 to 30 December cements his status as the leading American night fighter ace of the war, with 7 confirmed victories by war's end, all scored in the Black Widow. But in the moment, there is little sense of heroism. Just fatigue. And the knowledge that the next night, they will likely be back in the air again. 2:15 hours, December 30th, 1944. The airfield at McGuire is quieting down. The rush of the combat night is over. A few mechanics still work under hooded lamps, and a handful of sentries walk their posts, rifles on shoulders. In the operations tent, the last of the paperwork from the night sorties is being finished. Smith and Porter sit on folding chairs, flight gear half unzipped, cups of coffee cooling in their hands. Their eyes are red from strain. The adrenaline has ebbed, leaving behind a heavy fatigue that settles into bone and muscle. On the board beside them, 4 red X's mark where enemy tracks ended. 2 at medium altitude west of Mindoro. 1 low over the sea where the floatplane went in. 1 more where the fast bomber broke apart in midair. By 3 o'clock, they signed their names to the mission report. 4 separate engagements. 4 destroyed. No witnesses from other aircraft, no camera gun film. The night leaves little physical proof. But radar plots, radio logs, and consistent cockpit details are enough. The kills stand. In the days that follow, the story spreads through the 418th Night Fighter Squadron. By January 2, 1945, intelligence summaries mention exceptional night interception success by 1 P-61 crew. Briefings for new missions use the Mindoro engagements as case studies. Close control by ground radar. Early pickup by airborne SCR-720. Deliberate, patient closure to firing range. Short, aimed bursts from the 420mm cannons, without tracers, at ranges between 75 feet and 500 yards. For the squadron, it's proof that the tactics they've been training for since stateside days are not just theory. They work, even in the worst environment, a new strip, rough maintenance, bad weather, complex air picture. By late January 1945, the 418th is already shifting its focus northward. The campaign for Luzon is underway. Allied forces advance toward Manila. Japanese air units are being pushed back, their numbers dwindling, but night raids still come in bursts. Smith and Porter continue to fly. Through February and March, they patrol over airfields, convoys, and staging areas, sometimes seeing nothing more than stars and cloud, sometimes catching the brief streak of a lone bomber trying to slip through. Some nights end with another victory added to the tally. Many more end with no contacts, just hours of instrument flying and the strain of knowing that a single mistake in the dark could end the mission, and their lives, without an enemy shot fired. By mid-1945, Smith's personal score has climbed to 7 confirmed night victories, all in the P-61. He is now recognized within 5th Air Force as the top American night fighter ace in the theater. The title is informal, but the respect is real. Other crews listen when he speaks in briefings. Younger pilots ask him how close to get, when to fire, what to do if the radar picture suddenly blooms with clutter. He tells them the same thing each time: trust your radar operator. Believe the instruments. Don't waste your ammunition. Don't rush. When they ask about the 75-foot shot, he shakes his head. Too close, he says. It worked that night. Might not work the next. Close in, but don't let your ego fly the airplane. By August 1945, the war in the Pacific ends. The news reaches the squadron on a humid, overcast day. Japan has agreed to surrender. There are cheers, bursts of gunfire into the air, toasts made with whatever alcohol can be scrounged from supply tents and officer clubs. The P-61s do not stop flying immediately. For a time, they escort occupation convoys, patrol for stray aircraft, and provide a visible reminder that Allied air power now owns the night as well as the day. But the era of combat sorties is over. In the months that follow, men rotate home. Some are released from service and return to civilian life, factories, farms, colleges. Others, including experienced pilots and radar operators, stay in what will soon be called the U.S. Air Force, carrying their skills into a new world of jets, improved radar, and early warning networks. Smith's career follows that pattern. By 1946, he has moved from frontline squadrons into roles where experience matters more than raw flying hours: training, evaluations, advisory positions. He helps revise night fighter tactics manuals, adding sections born from Mindoro and later patrols. Procedures for low-altitude radar intercepts are clarified. Recommended firing ranges are updated. Emphasis on crew coordination is underlined, literally, on some typed pages, in red pencil.